We haven't seen something like this in a long time. So when you look at the brand new iPhone SE, the iPhone XR, and the iPhone 11, there's a handful of feature differences that separate these phones, and of course a few hardware as well, but it does mark a monumental change. It's one of the first times you can get 3 phones from Apple for under $1,000. And now as a consumer, you can pick which of those features are important to you. And so I wanted to compare the 3 and see which one is the right phone to get. So again, Apple's design language is kind of pre-iPhone 10 and then post-iPhone 10. And you look at the 11 and you look at the XR, and those are certainly post-iPhone 10 world. They've got the notches, Face ID. They look close enough to the current flagship iPhones. But before that iPhone 10 was the iPhone 8, which Apple is obviously using here for the iPhone SE. It's more of the classic look. It's got a physical Touch ID button. It's got a forehead and chin. It's certainly that smaller size at 4.7 inches. And this is a design that Apple has perfected. And as Apple has made more and more of these, they've got the cost way down. So if you look at the iPhone SE and you're wondering why they didn't just do a few things, why doesn't it have Face ID? Why didn't they make the bezels a little bit smaller? The answer is that would have raised the cost. And Apple was clearly trying to get the best iPhone at the lowest price with the iPhone SE. So obviously just looking at these phones, there are a ton of visual differences, things you can see, but underneath that, these phones are a lot more similar than you might think. So I've gone on record as saying that, at least for me, the screen is one of the most important spec elements of a phone. It's your portal to everything it can do. It doesn't matter how good or fast a phone is. If you can't see that goodness and speed, it's not going to be that useful to you. And if you look at these phones, it would appear the iPhone SE has a vastly inferior screen to the XR and the 11, but in reality, it's really not the case. They're kind of surprisingly similar. So the SE has a 720p screen, and you're probably thinking, not the best resolution. Certainly more resolution is better, but it does have a PPI of 326, which is coincidentally the exact same pixel density as the XR and the iPhone 11. So the screens are essentially the same as far as the pixel density. The colors look pretty bright and vibrant. Despite them not being OLED panels, they're all LCD. The blacks still look really black. What this is gonna boil down to is, what size do you want? Do you want 4.7? Do you want to go larger to 6.1? You have choice here when it comes to these 3 devices, and it's nice there's consistency across all of them. So you look at that $399 price point, it's easy to forgive a lot of things. Yeah, you wish the phone was OLED, but that's easily forgivable here to get under that $400 price point. And I think the trade-off that Apple made is really a good one. They perfected these LCD panels. They may not be the best screens out there, but they're definitely gonna be amongst the best screens for the price. And I think that theme kind of holds true for pretty much everything about the iPhone SE. So aside from screen, I think camera is perhaps the biggest reason that people buy phones. And the narrative used to be that if you were getting an inexpensive phone, you're usually going to get a less quality of a camera. And that narrative has kind of changed over recent years, and it kind of continues with the iPhone SE. You are still getting a really good camera starting at the $400 price point. So it's a 12 megapixel camera, and as far as we can tell, it's the same physical camera hardware that we have with the iPhone 8, just with now the processing power of the A13 Bionic that's also found in the iPhone 11. And you might not think that processing power is going to make that big a difference, but when you couple in a bit older optics with modern processing power, what you get is a really good combination. So you look at all of these 3 phones, it's probably not going to be much of a surprise that the most expensive iPhone 11 is going to give you the most from a hardware perspective. It's got 2 cameras, you've got more versatility in there. But the iPhone SE and the iPhone XR were surprisingly similar. And if you could say one thing about Apple's cameras on all their phones, they've been pretty consistent. They're generally some version of good in almost every setting. So one big omission with the SE is night mode. If you said something that's important to you, you are gonna wanna go for the iPhone 11. It's the only one of the 3 that offer it. I'd be happy to make that trade-off though for the price. Pretty much every picture here came out looking good. If you're in highlight situations, you're outdoors, you're taking pictures of your kids, photos are going to look really amazing. You see some artifacting in low light. I think that's a situation where you start to see that perhaps this isn't a flagship camera, at least flagship by 2020 standards, but any other situation, these look good. So video is kind of an interesting story between these phones, and sort of keeping with that theme of photography, the iPhone 11, the most expensive option, is going to give you a bit more. You've got HDR in video with 4K 60, which is certainly nice to have. If you sort of pull that out, all 3 phones can shoot 4K 60 and do it really well. And video is where I think the iPhone SE is going to absolutely decimate the competition that is out there. Apple's always done video really well, but now bringing that video prowess to that under $400 price point is absolutely awesome. So looking at these 3 phones, now that we've seen camera and video capabilities, there's $200 that separate the base iPhone SE and XR, and $300 that separate the base SE and the base iPhone 11. Is that a price premium that you're willing to pay? The iPhone SE to XR, based just on camera prowess, is not a $200 difference. If you look at the difference from the SE to the iPhone 11, then it becomes a choice. Do you want that HDR in video? Do you want night mode? Do you want that extra wide angle? I could see that being useful to a lot of people. I like having wide angle shots. I could probably justify it a lot easier for the 11 versus the SE than I could from the XR versus the SE. So when you look to get a new phone, whichever one of these 3 iPhones you decide, or even another flagship Android phone, you might want to consider switching your cellular service. And I do want to give a big thank you and a shout out to this video's sponsor, Ting. And Ting is not a typical prepaid provider. You're only paying for what you are using. And this time when everybody's stuck at home, probably what you're using is Wi-Fi. So you're probably paying $60 a month plus to your cell phone carrier to use data that you're not using, or using minutes that you're not using because you're on Wi-Fi calling. Ting is a really amazing choice. You can actually get a cell phone full plan for in the 20s per month if you want. And they use Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint, so you know it's going to work wherever you are. I think what's cool too, you sign up, so go to john.ting.com, they'll send you a SIM card and you activate within minutes. And I found that to be a really good option if you're looking to save a couple bucks, while everybody's stuck at home but still want your phone to work as normal. You can port your cell phone number over and bring it with you. And whatever you decide to do, whatever you use, you're only paying for that amount of usage. If you want to learn more, check out service, go to john.ting.com. We'll link to it down below. And if you sign up there, you'll get $25 free credits for your account. So one of the craziest things, at least to me, about the iPhone SE is that Apple put in their current flagship processor, the processor that's in the iPhone 11, in the iPhone 11 Pro, the A13. I think Apple could have very easily taken an older processor, the A12, and probably still charged the same price point. But what you are getting is a really powerful, fast phone. That's not gonna be much of a surprise, right? Apple phones are generally fast. You couple their flagship processor with a lower resolution screen and now plenty of RAM, and you get a really fast experience. You have the older processor, the A12 in the XR, which is still extremely capable. What you're getting with the iPhone SE is a presumed 5 years of software update, which is amazing and kind of uncanny at a phone at that price point. But looking at these phones, the biggest difference and the trade-off you're gonna have to decide if you wanna make is Touch ID versus Face ID. And Apple's perfected Touch ID. It's really good here. It's the best version of a physical fingerprint reader on a phone. Now, ordinarily, I would give a big knock to the iPhone SE. I prefer facial unlock. I think it works great for third-party authentication. It's fast, most importantly, you don't have to think about it. But I'd be hard-pressed to not say, you know what, I could happily give up Face ID to get a phone that capable and that powerful as the iPhone SE. The other differences here too, smaller things you might not notice. So IP rating. The iPhone SE and the iPhone XR is IP67, whereas the iPhone 11 is IP68. The iPhone SE and the iPhone 11 actually both support gigabit LTE, where you don't get that with the iPhone XR. That's also true with Wi-Fi 6, which is on the SE, not on the XR, but also on the 11. So Apple's sort of spatial awareness chip, the U1, how you can sort of point your phone at things, it makes AirDrop a bit easier. It's in the iPhone 11, it's not in the XR and the SE. So I think Apple's pretty well known for good battery life. Their at least like standby time has been awesome on all of their phones. Now the battery in the iPhone SE, to get it that thin and light, it's not that big. Allegedly it's just under 2,000 milliamp hours. So we'll test that a bit more, but if you can use the iPhone 8 as a judge, it should easily get you through a day. And the iPhone XR and the iPhone 11 have really stellar battery life. Even for the most power users, you can generally get through a full day doing almost anything. That is one of the benefits of having that low resolution screen. It's not as power hungry as the higher resolution displays tend to be. So for the first time in the iPhone world in a while, the price of the phone that you want to buy can determine the features that you want. If camera is the most important thing to you and you want versatility of wide angle and you shoot a lot of stuff at night, the iPhone 11 is a great choice to go. If you want the fastest phone out there, the most modern processor, then you can go for the iPhone SE or the iPhone 11. As I went through this whole process, it kind of became apparent to me at least that the iPhone XR was kind of the odd man out. With the same pixel density, but the lesser processor at a more expensive price, it becomes harder to recommend the iPhone XR. And if I had a wager, it'd probably be the next phone on Apple's chopping block. And I find it interesting that Apple is competing obviously against the whole Android world, but also competing with themselves. You've got 3 choices of phones to buy. And I suppose if Apple figures if they're gonna be cannibalized by anyone, it might as well be themselves. And I give them credit for using what appears to be a stale design with the iPhone SE, because the price to manufacture that was so low that they're giving users, I think for the first time that I can remember, not a basis to complain about price, especially for an iPhone. So what I can say with some degree of certainty is look past the XR. I don't think that's the iPhone to buy anymore, despite being still Apple's most popular phone. If you don't need that extra wide angle camera, you're not shooting a lot of phones at night, I think the iPhone SE is kind of the perfect phone for almost everybody.